Wuchang Fallen Feathers is a fusion of Dark Souls 1's level design with Bloodborne styles combat in Liza P's Fable art system, a game that I thoroughly enjoyed on my first playthrough thanks to 505 Studio sending me a review copy. With that being said, this video is not sponsored, they were just kind enough to send me a copy. Due to me enjoying the game so much, I wanted to do a challenge run in it, and the first question that popped into my head was, can you beat Wuchang Fallen Feathers without a weapon? Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more crazy runs like these, or just like seeing me suffer. I also have a VODs channel, so if you would like to see unedited versions of some of my runs, check out my VODs channel, Arcane VODs. With that said, let's get into the rules for this run. Rule number 1, no weapons, which means I cannot have any weapon equipped at any point. In a brief moment, I will go over why that is such a big deal. Rule number 2, no summons. And lastly, rule number 3, I must beat all bosses. With the rules out of the way, let's get this run started. At the start of the game, Wuchang, our main character, wakes up with amnesia and has been infected with the feathering, which is a disease that is spreading throughout the lands, transforming people into monsters. Essentially, if Bloodborne took place in China. I then stumbled across a very well-dressed lady who had the audacity to give me a weapon, so I threw that shit away because I have no need for such trivial things as weapons. Instead, I trade in a longsword for some flying daggers, aka throwing knives. JK Leeds would be so proud. With not having a weapon, I did the first logical thing and started punching. So the damage isn't great, and come to find out, Bare Fist only have a basic light attack. I was hoping for it to be like Bloodborne, where you could still use R2 for charge attacks. Sadly, that was not the case, and it'll be a small minute before I get spells. After bullying some vertically challenged men, I meet an old Taoist man who wants to help me, but all I can focus on in this cutscene is the jar. If you know, you know. Once done staring at the jar, I pick up some dumplings, which will be very helpful for some extra heals. I then talk to the boatman, who figured another bonk on my head wouldn't hurt. Come to find out, he bonked a bit too hard. So here the game teaches us about Skyborn Might, which is this game's version of mana or Fable charges. The way you can get Skyborn Might is by perfect dodging enemy attacks, by having a node unlocked in the weapon tree that allows you to gain Skyborn Might by deflecting, using bonding time, or after X amount of hits. And lastly, using an item called Plume Branches. Currently, I cannot use Skyborn Might since I am not allowed to use weapons or have access to spells yet. Once the tutorial is over, we are introduced to the first boss of this game, who is supposed to teach you about dying, kind of like the Dragon God from Demon Souls. But that doesn't mean I wasn't going to try. Oh, 6 damage. Well, that was short-lived. I guess it's time.
Thou art a foul, cowardly, wifeless knave. You saw as I did. You saw the health bar move. It can bleed. It can die.
But I'm only using fists. I haven't even got spells.
Thou must get good.
Oh, fuck me. Well, thank fucking God that's over with. Why did I put myself through all this trouble? Well, once beating by Karoo, I am awarded 5 red mercury essence, which is this game's resources for accessing nodes in the skill tree. Essentially 5 free levels without having to level up. You can also gain red mercury essence by spinning red mercury, this game's versions of souls, to gain levels. With that done, I say hi to a child with a freakishly large head, who I have the utmost sympathy for his mother. I found a friend I came to this island with to find clues about my sister. Are you my sister? Oh, a free level. After chatting with the fine lady in red, I finally get access to my first spell, Vorpal Blades, which shoots 2 projectiles that track the enemy for the cost of 1 Skyborn Might. Now that I have a spell, I can go over why not having a weapon, or more specifically, not having a one-handed sword drastically hurts my spell damage. One-handed swords are this game's versions of staffs since it increases spells damage, and on top of that, they have a skill called Binding Time, which allows a user to gain Skyborn Might after a set amount of time. When casting a spell, this increases this Binding Time stack, which in doing so speeds up the process of you getting Skyborn Might back. This stack can go all the way up to 8. There are even weapon arts like Awakening Seal that will grant you 2 stacks of Binding Time, and if you have this skill Unbroken Focus, you can have a setup where you never lose 3 stacks of Binding Time. Hold on, we're not done yet. Weapons can also use benedictions, which are stones you can place for added effects like killing an enemy buffs your damage and you get a Skyborn Might back, or gaining Skyborn Might increases your spell damage for a short period of time. On top of this, there's tempering, which lets you buff your weapon with an element, but you can get a bone needle in the skill tree to increase your spell damage output, and even acquire stone needles that increase your magic and feathering damage. So, with a one-handed sword, you can make an engine that continuously gives you Skyborn Might back, get buff damage from this, buff your weapon with tempering, and upgrade your weapon to further increase spell damage. All of this long-winded paragraph I just read to all of you, I cannot use. I am simply stuck with the spell and its scaling level. Alrighty, with that long explanation out of the way of why I'm fucked, I come to the first boss, which is technically not true. This is just a mini boss that is here to teach you about charging heavy attacks to get backstabs. I am happy to see though that they went with the Bloodborne style backstabs. This is my preferred way that Souls games do backstab mechanics. For me in this case, it became me honing my dodging abilities to get Skyborn Might to spam Vorpal Blades. After the fight, I get a Forgotten Remembrance, which will increase my healing capacity. I then make it to a small temple where I get my first fire pot, aka fire bombs, which actually scales with strength. Shout out to the backlogs for fighting that out. With the locals blown to bits, I fight a jar man, which is this game's crystal lizards, but they actually fight back. Once defeated, they will drop an upgrade material, which I have no use for, but they also give a plumed branch, which is important because when used will give me 5 Skyborn Might, but at the cost of increasing my madness. Madness is a unique feature in Wuchang. The higher your madness is, the more damage you will take, but the more damage you will deal as well. With no madness buff, I did 133 damage, but with the buff, I did 149, which is about a 12% increase in damage. With the damage received, it seems we take about 2% more, maybe a bit less. It's hard to tell since I have to eyeball it. You can even make builds around having madness within the skill tree, which I will be doing. There are multiple ways to get madness. You can get it by killing humans, using invoke, which is buying items at the cost of increasing your madness, very crucial in this run. Lastly, dying or using items. The easiest way is to use maddening incense, which the game gives you. When used, it will increase your madness by 50% per use, and can be refilled when resting at a shrine, which will be very important later on. To remove madness, you have 3 options: kill feather enemies, use an offering at a shrine, or defeat your inner demon. An inner demon will be summoned after you die with 100% madness. This is similar to Hollow Knight's Shade mechanic, where if you beat your inner demon, you will get your mercury back and your madness is reset to 0. The cool thing about it in this game is you can use your inner demon to fight other enemies nearby, which I take full advantage of in this run. With madness fully explained, I meet the best vendor-character in the game, Wuchang, simply because it's fun to say his name, Wuchang. I then pick up a Lost Remains, which will increase my healing potency and take on the first legit boss of the game. Well, I say legit, but they're actually using him as another tutorial for backstabbing human bosses, which I cannot do yet. I did try and see how much damage I could get by punching him, and I only got 7 damage. Not wanting to have another 40-minute plus fight, I stuck with just using Vorpal Blades. The best part about this fight was the second phase where he does its ay bit. I don't know why, every time he did it, I felt compelled to do it as well. Overall, a very easy fight to get Skyborn Might and get hits off since he was designed to be left open for backstabs. Once defeating a boss, you earn an Echo spell, which is a spell that mimics or echoes one of the boss's attacks. In this case, I got Datunga. Datunga is a melee fire spell that sweeps in a horizontal motion for the cost of 2 Skyborn Mites. But if you have an additional 3 Mites, you can do a follow-up slam attack that deals massive burn buildup. Sadly, this will take a couple of bosses before I realize the follow-up attack because I forget to read. Since this is a melee spell, it can actually backstab enemies and bosses, which means this bad boy is going to be used a lot. After the fight, I level up to 13 and made the crucial mistake of not picking up Fury of the Skyborn, which would allow me at 50% madness and above to reduce the cost of echo spells by 1. I really should get better at reading descriptions. Instead, I started increasing my magic damage. I then come across a bamboozling, which can be killed for a currency that can be used to trade with a cute panda. Sadly, the panda will never have anything worthwhile for me. Making it to the next area, we're introduced to red-eyed enemies, which are stronger versions of elite enemies, as you can see by me getting my ass handed to me. The important thing about beating these enemies is that it will net me 1 free essence, so throughout this run, I made sure to hunt down as many as I could to get a free node. After beating Red Eyes, I made it to Shu Sanctum, where Wu Gang and Tao Queen currently reside. They are both merchants, but Wu Gang sells general stuff like firebombs and throwing knives, and Tao sells boss gear and pendants. Both of these merchants need to be given items to further increase their stocks, and as I progress through my journey, they will move to different locations. I then purchased some gear from Tao since I'll be needing some corruption resistance, this game's version of poison, for an upcoming boss and area. Armor is very important and needs to be changed out depending on the situation you are in. Depending on what you have equipped, you can actually put your resistance into the negatives, which means if I'm negative in fire resistance and I get hit by a fire attack, I will instantly be burned. So I will have to make sure throughout this run I find gear that will help me mitigate damage and status effects for specific boss fights. Personally, I really like how they do armor in this game. It actually makes every piece of gear have value and not just take up space. With now having some new armor, I took on a fire dancer dude that once defeated will give me Infernal Flame. Infernal Flame allows me to shoot out a fire mass that tracks the enemy and explodes on impact. Ironically, most of the early game spells are the most important in this run. With having Internal Flame, I use it to help slay a wild inner demon. You heard correctly, wild inner demon. They are inner demons that you can find through exploring the game, and once defeated, they will net you a needle that will help with tempering, but I can't use tempering. So I hunt them down instead for Bow Blood, which is a resource used to help increase the effect of Madness Incense. Back at Shu Sanctum, I talk to White-Haired Man since I need to do his questline for a boss. I level up to 17 and make sure to get Fiery Embers to increase fire buildup and get the 2+5 magic nodes. With that done, I can take on the next boss, Gluttonous Monstrosity, which is an optional boss that you can miss. Damn, Lindsay, how did you know I like my women thick and birdish? For this fight, my main goal was going to try and get burns off. So I focused on using Infernal Flame and Firebombs to get the status effect. The nice thing about proccing burn is that it does a bit of additional damage and then the tick damage afterwards. I did try to use Datunga but found I was whiffing more often than not, so I just stuck with Infernal Flame since it could track the boss. This boss also introduces a reaction command where if you get stunned by a howl, you can get out of it by pressing B, which is a nice touch to spice up Souls-like combat. It would be cool to see more QTEs in Souls games. Tragically, at this time, I still didn't have dodging fully down, so I ended up dying twice. The trick to this fight was staying back and baiting out her Wolverine attack, which allowed me to get 2 Skyborn Might to use Infernal Flame. I repeated this enough times to get the boss's health low enough to kill it with a firebomb. This earns me the Echo of Lu Hong Lu. Lu Hong Lu, when used, unleashes a loud scream that can damage enemies, stun them in place, or even knock them over. This is also my first feathering spell, which is the other type of spell damage in this game. With my waifu defeated, I take on the main boss of this area, the Feathered Priest, aka the Hunchback of Notre Dame, who was stupid easy to dodge to build up massive amounts of Skyborn Might to unleash a flurry of infernal flames, and in between of all that, I would throw firebombs at his face. In hindsight, I should have used Dutonga to get a backstab followed by its slam attack since it would have dealt more damage, but I didn't think about using this until near the end of the fight. Either way, an easy fight nonetheless. Defeating Mr. Hunchback earned me the Echo of Lu Bing Zong, which is a feathering spell that launches you into the air, throwing a javelin down onto your enemy. It also has the Alacrity ability, which means you can avoid damage if you time the spell properly. If you have the Alacrity node in the skill tree and have above 50% madness, you can get a Skyborn Might upon a successful dodge. Another important ability in this run. After the fight, I head to Reverent Temple to talk to this nice lady who gives me the Ludon Pendant. Pendants are this game's versions of Dark Souls rings. The Ludon Pendant is very important since it reduces damage taken but at the cost of increasing stamina usage. This pendant saved my butt on my first playthrough and will stay on this entire playthrough. While gathering pendants, I also make sure to get the Fiend Felling Pendant, which will increase damage against large enemies. It was also at this point I learned to read skill descriptions that I picked up Fury of the Skyborn, which will reduce my echo spells by 1. I then unlocked the next area, which is an appetizer to come for the real poison area. With having to rely strictly on dodges to get Skyborn Might, getting around sometimes could be a bit difficult. Also, something that I forgot to mention about in the skill tree is that you can reset any node for free, which is just amazing for build crafting and testing and a crucial part in this run. I ended up taking away the feathering nodes to go into the one-handed sword tree to start working my way to all the +5 magic nodes. Once done with that, I make sure to pick up the Draco Lich Pendant that will help with some damage reduction, the Phoenix Pendant which will increase status buildup on throwables, and most importantly the Twin Infant Pendant which will increase stamina recovery speed. Also, don't worry, I am still using Bare Fist to kill certain enemies. It was also here that I discovered about Dutonga's follow-up attack. I am just glad I learned it here and not near the end of the game. While in this area, you learn about Blight. Blight eats away at your health bar and locks you out from healing that portion of what it eats. So it's best to cure it as fast as possible. With this area fully explored, it's time to fight the Great Centipede. This fight looks intimidating at first, but in actuality, it's really easy once you learn to bait out the Great Centipede demon into the lightning pillars in the area. When doing this, it will stun it for a short duration. The downside here is, if I don't have any Skyborn Might, is a waste of a knockdown. At this time, I thought plume branches were a finite resources, so I wanted to save them for harder bosses, but I'll find out later that they're actually farmable. For this fight, I just stuck with using Dutonga since it only costs 1 Skyborn Might to use thanks to the Fury of the Skyborn node. With Dutonga only costing 1 Might to use, I could get multiple hits off to inflict burn, and with the Great Centipede having very easy attacks to dodge, especially his dig attack, I didn't have any issues refilling my Skyborn Might. I will say, on my first playthrough when the boss did his big magic attack, it threw me off so hard. It was extremely cool and terrifying at the exact same time. What's also cool is that when you beat the boss, you get that spell. Sadly, this spell has a high Skyborn Might cost, it also has a slow cast time, and the damage is not that great, so I never ended up using it. With the boss defeated, I find my friend who informs me I was a pirate and hands over my pirate clothes, which has me wondering why does he have Wuchang's clothes in the first place. I then make it to Doom Willow Beach, where the game teaches us about enemy weaknesses and quick use. The great thing about quick use is that you don't have to spam the D-pad to get the spell you want to use. You just need to hold down Y or triangle and then press any of the bumper buttons to use the spell you need. Extremely important for some of the harder fights later on in this run. We also learn here that shrines can be mimics. That's just pure evil. We can add this to the Souls game's PTSD list, because from now on, I will never trust checkpoints. In the Burning Beach Woods, I meet the Lady in Red again, get a spell that increases the damage of my next attack, fight a bird samurai that once defeated gives me the Burning Flames spell, a spell that I probably should have used more often than I did, but with it costing 3 Might to use, I just couldn't justify using it when Dutonga and Infernal Flame are more cost efficient and can deal more damage overall. I then progress the old man's questline, level up to 26, continuing down the one-handed sword tree, and take on the boss of this area, Soul Wood. Is that what kids are calling Morning Woods these days? Yeah, so this boss is a joke, probably the most disappointing boss fight in the entire game for me. All you have to do is stand to the left side where you practically can't get hit and just shoot infernal flames or throw fire bombs to just melt his HP since he is extremely weak to fire. I even used plume branches to speed up this fight because I just find it that boring and wanted to get it over with. The spell you get from this fight is a flying projectile that explodes on impact. They knew what they were doing here when naming this boss and spell. The Echo of Soul Wood is a feathering spell that deals high corruption buildup at the cost of also building up the user's corruption. Hands down the best corruption spell in the game, and you will see why in not too long. The next area is the Tang Emperor's Palace, which is a very small section, but it does loop back to Shu Sanctum, which I thought was really cool and reminded me a lot of Dark Souls 1's level design. Actually, in general, the entire game has that DS1 level design, even to the point of having far bonfires or shrines from one another. I personally think they could have been a bit closer, but I get what they were trying to go for. What's also neat about this area is the introduction to the Sage Door, where you're given a question to answer. If you answer correctly, the door opens and you get a benediction item. If you answer wrong, you will be teleported to another section of the level. The funny thing is, in the last area, you will need to fail on purpose to get to an optional boss, and you can only answer it once, so it's easy to lock yourself out of that. With that said, I went back to Shu Sanctum to buy some new armor from Tao and get a new spell from Wu Gang. Corruptive Flames is a feathering spell that shoots out multiple projectiles that can cause corruption buildup. I will be going over why it's not that good of a spell. I then decided to test out feathering builds for traversal to see if it's better than magic. Tragically, it is not, and it actually makes things a lot harder, so I switched back to magic. Before taking on the boss of this area, I have a rematch with one of the tutorial bosses, and this time she actually put up a good fight. But unfortunately for her, I have a spell that can backstab her, letting me punch her to death. With the mini-boss dealt with, time for the real boss of this area, the Commander. The Commander is a pretty big jump in difficulty coming from the other bosses so far. At this time, I didn't know what enemy types were more weak to magic or feathering, so I went with a combination of both to see what would affect the Commander more, and the clear answer is feathering. But due to experimenting, I ended up losing the first try. Before going back in, I made sure to switch my magic nodes to feathering nodes, get Withering Touch to increase corruption buildup, equip the rest of my feathering spells, and some purple camellia to remove corruption from Soul Wood. For phase 1, the goal was to get corruption off, so I started with Soul Wood, and when I didn't have any Skyborn Might, I would try and use corruption daggers, but they missed every time. I even tried Flame Corruption, but as you can see, it can miss very easily. Soul Wood has an AoE to it, so even if you don't directly hit the enemy, the AoE can still get them, which just makes it more reliable and cost efficient to use over Flame Corruption. While corruption was in effect, I would use the Javelin spell to get extra damage off. Once she entered her second phase, I figured I would just continue the same strategy, but it proved to be a bit more difficult than I thought, with the boss constantly dodging. Then I remembered that the Javelin spell has Alacrity, which means I can get a Skyborn Might back when using it, and let me tell you, this spell just dominated the Commander. With the spell launching me in the air, I could easily get the dodge off to continuously use the Javelin to the point of killing her with it, and on top of that, looking like a badass while doing it. Sadly, she doesn't give a spell after the fight. I guess since you don't technically kill her, no spell for us, but I'll fix that later. I then get access to the snow area where the game teaches us about frost that when procced on us reduces our stamina by 50%, which usually is not that big of a deal, but for our enemies, it takes a nice chunk of health off when procced. Sadly, I won't realize how good this is until later. Also, this is where the game area gets much larger, and on top of that you have an option to go to a different zone instead, which I took full advantage of. Back at the snow area, they have these lovely hidden landmines that will have you wishing you were back in Blight Town. While at the bandit camp area, I found another dancing demon that when killed this time gives you dark frost flames, which is like infernal flames, but instead of the status buildup on the explosion, it's after when it leaves a frost cloud behind, meaning the enemy needs to stay in one spot for it to be useful. I would have much preferred it to be like infernal flames, but it is what it is. Either way, I continue to explore the area and find the old man again and chat him up, and then commit arson 3 times so that I could take on the main boss of this area. Before doing that though, I went over to the other zone to increase my healing potency, and along the way I died and had to kill my inner demon, but upon doing that I noticed that I got a plume branch afterwards. which means I can farm plume branches off inner demons. The way I went about this was going to Hill's Watch, use Madness Incense to get 100% madness, walk off the edge to kill myself. Once back alive, the inner demon will spawn, run to the other side of the bridge and hang out on that side, and the inner demon will just run straight off, netting me a plume branch. Which means I can keep doing this before every boss fight and have 5 plume branches, giving me 25 Skyborn Might to use. At this point in time in the skill tree, I got all the +5 nodes in the one-handed sword tree, so I moved on to the axe tree to get the +5 nodes in health and stamina, and after that moved on to dual blades tree to start working on getting the +5 health and stamina nodes in that section. With that done, I could take on the optional boss in this area, the General of the North. I'm not even going to try and say his actual name. From the commander fight, I learned that human types are weak to feathering spells, while monster types are weak to magic. The thing is, I have no clue what this dude is. Technically, he's a monster because he can't be backstabbed, but he takes more corruption buildup than fire buildup, which could be because he could do fire attacks, but the damn tree boss also did fire attacks and is weak to fire. So, I decided to go with a hybrid of using Soulwood and Infernal Flames to get burn and corruption proc to whittle this big guy's health down. Except he whittled my health down much faster, and he did this to me 3 times. Really, the biggest mistake I made in the first 3 attempts was trying to stay close to him. Once he backed up, I found I could bait out his jump attack and ice attack consistently to get Skyborn Mites to then hit him with fire and corruption, leading to a chill victory, earning me his lightning arrow spell, which isn't as good as I would like it to be. It does a piercing spread shot and then explodes at the end. The thing is, the explosions never hits the enemy because of the piercing effect, so there's no real benefit to this spell. Due to this, I never use this spell in a boss fight. Immediately afterwards, I took on the main boss, the Ming General, who I used the exact same strategy as the commander to bully the shit out of this poor dude. He was extremely weak to corruption, and with being able to bait out his jump attacks made it super easy to get the javelin spell off, to lead to a very quick first try, earning me a Ice Glaive spell, which sadly isn't as good as the Fire Glaive spell. The Ice Glaive has a slower start animation, which makes it very easy to get hit while using it, and the damage output isn't as good as the Flame Glaive spell. With the Ming General dealt with, I can make my way up to the palace where I got to fight some ninja ladies. The toughest ones were the ones in pink. Those ladies were smacking me around left and right, until I learned they have the Dark Souls 2 pathing. Then they became a walk in the park to deal with. At the top of the palace, Did she just play Basic Instinct?
Oh, she sure did. My new Dame Mommy can call me Long Dong.
Okay, you had enough screen time, back to the dungeon. Once done talking to this game's thirst trap, I get the Waspomancy spell, by far my favorite spell name in this game. Waspomancy is the only Blight spell in the game. Blight for bosses will take off about a quarter of their health, but this is only good at the start of battle. Since Blight only eats away from the start of the health bar, it will not pick up from where the boss's HP is, which is still super strong, especially in this run. I'm sorry to say to my fellow men and women of culture, but the next boss is the Mistress. I know having to fight her must have broken Doomwolf's heart. Knowing that the Mistress was a human type, I went in with a feather build. My biggest blunder in this fight was not using Waspomancy at the start. I had no clue what Blight actually did at this point, which is no excuse because the game literally has a help section that explains every terminology. No, instead I went with the Soulwood tactic of just shooting my load at her, which was working, well, until I decided to use Javelin spell like I normally do, but it ended up backfiring on me majority of the time. Luckily, the Niter Pots, aka Black Firebombs, helped make up for some of that damage loss. This fight was extremely hectic. From the Mistress constantly spamming range attacks and closing gaps to step on me, to me corrupting myself because I wasn't paying attention when spamming Soulwood, to using up all my heal items to just be on the verge of death, to just say fuck it at the end and go all out with Plume Branches and Javelin spams to somehow pull off the first try, earning me another mediocre corruption spell. This spell is pretty much the same as Flame Corruption, but it shoots out an orb that shoots projectiles. Probably good for groups of enemies, not so great for boss fights. With the Mistress sadly defeated, I buy her armor from Tal and make my way to the shaft. You just gotta love a nice long shaft to explore. Well, in this case, it could be a short shaft thanks to Duel, the professional shaft explorer, for pointing out you can skip the entire area from the start by following the boulder at the beginning down to a treasure chest that leads you to the bride's boudoir where the boss resides. But I made sure to go back and explore so that I could get some important items like a forgotten remembrance and the dragonfish pendant. Also, every time I fought the hook hand ladies, I kept hearing them say, "I'll fuck you," but they were actually saying, "I'll hook you." The "I'll fuck you" scared me a lot more. Also, fuck the Blight pots and their damn non-stop following. Before taking on the boss, I noticed I was 2 nodes away from getting the +5 to vitality in the dual blades tree. So instead of grinding, I went to the next zone where outside the refugee camp there's a red-eyed enemy that I can kill for 1 essence, and nearby in the woods area there's an elite enemy that drops a lot of mercury to get an easy level, for me to get the +5 vitality. With now having that, I can take on Frankenstein's bride. Looks like this game is trying to give Quelaag a run for her money. I only lasted 25 seconds on my first attempt, which is to be expected from Quelaag's levels of hotness. I knew from my first playthrough that she could be backstabbed in the first phase, so that's what I tried to focus on to get damage. Tragically, I ended up missing most of the time. I did end up getting her to her second phase thanks to Infernal Flame. It's just a shame it was a very short-lived attempt. Attempt number 3 and 4 weren't any better, but on attempt 4, I did find something out. If I stayed back, I could bait out her 3-hit combo where she shoots 2 projectiles and then does a dash attack. If you press Y right after you dodge the dash, you can get a backstab. And if you successfully dodge all of her attacks, you can do Dutunga's follow-up attack. I was also lucky most of the time to have 4 charges so that after the follow-up attack, I could get an extra single swing in to proc burn. With this strategy alone on my 5th attempt, I was able to no-hit her first phase. Her second phase, on the other hand, was not so clean. I thought it would be easy to proc burn and then frost, but come to find out you cannot have 2 magic status effects on at the same time. You can have 1 magic and 1 feathering, but not 2 of the same spell types. So with that plan being thrown into the trash, I just stuck with getting burns off since it was the cheapest status effect to get. Also, this fight as well got super chaotic. With her just shooting beams left and right and making the ceiling fall and her running over me to the point of almost killing me, I thought I was going to lose this attempt. But fortunately for me, I had a trusty firebomb on hand to finish the job. Unfortunately though, the spell you get from this fight isn't very useful. After the fight, I find the bride's sisters cradling her decapitated head. She might need therapy after this. With the Frankenstein's bride taken care of, I head to the refugee camp and take a back way to the woods that leads you straight to the woods area's boss. But thanks to press continue for pointing this out, if you just quit out here, it will put you on the other side, bypassing the entire area and letting you get the shortcut back to the shrine. Of course, this would mean missing out on a lot of items and more importantly, continuing the old man's side quests, which I made sure to go and do. With those things done, I can take on the bow sorcerer. This is where I learned a lot of things. First, I learned my base damage is now shit, and I will need to rely heavily on status effects to kill bosses. The second is how good Blight actually is. I really wish I had learned this sooner because it could have sped up a lot of fights. Third is how busted Frost is. I had no clue it would just take a giant chunk of health off. And the last thing I learned is that all bosses can be manipulated to do the same attack combos when staying far away from them. Upon learning all this within my first 2 attempts of this fight, it made the 3rd attempt extremely easy, earning me the best frost spell and possibly the best high casting spell in the entire game. The Echo of the Bow Sorcerer. It summons a horde of ice spikes that deal good damage, but more importantly, high frost buildup. Which I am just finally happy to have a high cost spell that is actually useful in this run. I was expecting to use a much wider variety of spells, but sadly most spells just aren't that great in a weaponless run. With the bow sorcerer defeated, that means I can talk to the old man once more to set up a fight between me and him after entering chapter 5. After setting up 2 optional boss fights, I get to the Xinwu Temple, a super cool zone that feels like a vertical maze, having to go up and down through the different buildings to get to the other side. The only downside to this area are the damn despair enemies. Despair in this game is an instant kill when the status effect procs. It is not fun. It is not fun at all. So I just ran past all those sections to get to the next boss, the South General, who is a fusion of Ishin the Sword Saint and Zenitsu from Demon Slayer. He ended up thunderclapping my butt cheeks real good on the first round. The second round was much easier, starting with Waspomancy to get Blight off and then spamming Soul Wood. I did use the Mistress's Echo spell, but as you can clearly see, it didn't do shit. One cast of Soul Wood instantly proc Corruption, whereas the Mistress's spell didn't, and Soul Wood only cost 1 Skyborn Might to use, whereas the Mistress's spell costs 3. You can see why now Soul Wood is the best Corruption spell in the game, even with its trade-off. So once again, Soul Wood and the Javelin spell carry the human fights. No new spells this time though, just some dual blades I can't use. Right next door to this boss is the main boss of the area, Tony the Tiger. And this, kids, is why you should never meet your heroes. I wasn't paying attention when going into this fight and didn't have the most optimal gear on, so I died pretty fast. Apparently even with good gear, I can get one shot. Third attempt, I was really feeling that low damage output even with using fire spells, which this boss is super weak to. So on my fourth attempt, I made sure to put on the Fiend Felling Pendant to help with damage. At the start of my fourth attempt, I wanted to see how frost damage would do against him, and it wasn't great. Burn damage was definitely the way to go. So in phase 1, if I ran away, I can make him do his charge attack to get my Skyborn Might up to use the Flame Glaive combo. The nice thing about this combo is it moves you forward so you don't have to worry about getting hit by the next attack, which will be very crucial for the Dragon Emperor fight. So I just repeated this until I got to his second phase. In phase 2, he gets a human half that likes to go a bit nuts with lightning attacks, but he can still be manipulated to do his charge attack when standing far away. The only difference here is that he will continue the charge for a good bit. So instead of using the Flame Glaive, I use Infernal Flames to get burns off. Seeing how long this was going to take, I decided to start using Plume Branches early to get burn procs off faster. From here, I just needed one more burn to whittle his HP down to 0, earning me a Leaping Lightning spell that also inflicts paralysis buildup on me. I tried to use this spell, but never found it helpful. With Tony the Tiger defeated, I find the Boat Docks, which has a really cool NPC fight, that if you beat him, you can get his sword. Here I take the boat to the other side of the island to take on the monstrous toddler. Isn't that just all toddlers? This is practically the same fight at the beginning of the game, but this time he has a new moveset once his HP is past halfway, and I have spells this time. Come to find out, he's extremely weak to frost. So I bullied the demonic child to death with the Echo of the Bow Sorcerer. What? The monstrous toddler was my little brother that my father tried to bring back from the dead. Oh, well, I preferred being an only child anyways. With the toddler defeated, I move on to chapter 4 where shit hits the fan. The past areas I explored are now corrupted with the feathering and new crazy monsters are roaming the streets. It gave me Bloodborne Blood Moon vibes when I saw this for the first time. There's even a mini boss fight with an inner demon that you can take on, who is also super weak to frost damage. At this point in time, I made my way through the long sword tree and spear tree to get the +5 vitality they had. From here, I just focus on getting nodes to increase my damage. While making my way to the next boss, I made sure to get the Sun Pendant, which will increase my spell damage by 20%. Speaking of said boss, it is a rematch with the commander, but this time she has been fully corrupted by the feathering and takes full advantage of that to take revenge upon me. I also should have known she wasn't going to be weak to corruption this time, but I went for it anyways. I'm just happy she wasn't weak to Blight. Sadly, I cannot say the same for Frost. I was really hoping she was going to be weak to that one. So I ended up having to rely on Infernal Flames and Firebombs to lower her health down. Fortunately for me, this only took 5 tries to pull off. Afterwards, I get her Feathering Wing attack, which actually does really good damage, but unfortunately isn't the most useful without a status effect at this point in the run. With the commander officially defeated this time, I buy her armor from Tao and take on the Lady in Red, aka the Bow Magus, aka not my sister. Bo Magus was a bit rough having to deal with her skeleton minions popping up and holding me down, and for the fact I went in with feathering, when she is the master of feathering spells. On top of those two things, when she gets past half health, she gets an insane sword attack combo, summons a sword from the heavens to smite me down, and a damn bubble shield that protects her. To fix that issue, I went in this time with the Echo the Bow Sorcerer, so I win. I thought it was going to take a lot more than 2 tries, but Echo the Bow Sorcerer is just that good of a spell, coupled with Dark Frost Flames to help with the Frost proc. With that, I earned the Bo Magus Bubble Shield, which nullifies all damage for a couple of hits, which will be much needed for Old Man Zhao. So I continue through the story, killing an old friend, making a woman cry, ignoring this fucker, and taking on the Reborn. If you can't tell, I have no clue what's going on in the story, and this is my second playthrough. I'm not too sure how I did it, but I got him to loop the same attacks over and over again. He would jump over at me, I would hit him, he would scream, I would hit him again, he would run away, then try and hit me with his tail, I would then hit him, he would then use blood magic, and then I would hit him again, and he just kept repeating this loop, but sometimes doing the blood attack more often than the scream. He has other attacks like an Ice AoE and multiple claw combos, but if I just kept staying on his left side hitting him, he would just repeat this pattern until I won. Once the first phase is done, the Reborn turns into the Dragon Emperor, who has a cube or 20-sided dice or whatever you want to call it, that can absorb spell projectiles, which means I can only use melee spells, or that's what I thought. Come to find out, when he does his heal attack, yes, he has a heal attack, his cube won't absorb the projectiles. So this was the plan. At the start of phase 2, get 3 charges for Waspomancy, then wait for him to do his heal attack to use Waspomancy, which won't get the Blight off, but a single Blight dagger afterwards will do the trick. With Blight in effect, I then proceeded to stay on top of him and slap his shins with the Flaming Glaive. The Flame Glaive only costs 1 Skyborn Might to use, and with the boss having the ability to heal, I needed to DPS him as fast as possible. The insane thing I learned in this fight is that you can stop the Emperor from healing if you hit him hard enough. I didn't just do this once, I did it twice, so I know it wasn't me imagining things. And it was due to this, and a bit of luck, that I was able to win on my 5th attempt. Afterwards, you get his cube spell that absorbs spells attacks and explodes once full. A very cool spell, but I won't have any use for it. With the Dragon Emperor defeated, I make it to the final area, which is essentially hell with different monsters and demons fighting each other, but I have a bigger problem back at the tomb. Upon entering chapter 5, if you did Zhao's questline, you can fight him, and hands down, he is the hardest but coolest fight in the game. Zhao kicked my ass 9 times, and all 9 times came from his second phase, where he goes buck wild and has after images attacks. The key to winning was backstabbing with the Flame Glaive and then spamming the shit out of Soul Wood afterwards to get corruption off. This was easy in phase 1 because you could bait out his Ice Slam attack, which leaves him wide open. In phase 2, on the other hand, it was a bit trickier because now after he finishes his ice attack, he has an AoE sword attack. Things got so crazy in this phase, I even had to use the magic bubble to heal because otherwise he would combo me to death. The saving grace to this fight was learning I could backstab him after he does his grab into twirl attack. He stands still just for a moment for his after image to go out, which gave me enough time to get the backstab off, and with that, I brought down the mightiest general with no weapon. The spell you get from him is a magic AoE attack. I was really hoping for an after image spell. With now having the last chisel, I can answer the sage door wrong so that I can take on the Demon of Obsession, which is just an inner demon that has a bunch of spell attacks. She even has my icicle attack, but apparently I'm better at dodging it than her. This fight was no different than the mini boss version, just spam Frost to win. That just leaves the final boss of this game, but first, this walk-up was insane. They went all out with the design and the music went hard. Here's just a quick moment of it. Too bad the final boss wasn't anything special. He got me on the first try because I didn't have a good armor setup at the time, but I had no issues with him on my second attempt. I spent the first half of the fight using fire, thinking this would be faster than saving for the icicle spell, but come to find out the Echo the Bow Sorcerer and Frost do extremely good damage to him. So I just spammed it until he had about 10% HP left and then finished him off with Infernal Flames. This fight really needed a second phase. I didn't even use all my healing items I had on me, nor did I use all my plume branches. He was that much of a pushover. I honestly thought this run was going to be a lot harder than it was, but come to find out it was pretty chill. I would have liked to use a more variety of spells and items, but with not being able to produce much Skyborn Mites, I had to stick with cost-efficient spells. For combat items, fire bombs did well, especially for killing basic enemies, but throwing knives were not great since the game makes them have a weird arch on the throw, which made them miss majority of the time. With all that said, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, hit that subscribe button. At this time, I would also like to thank my channel supporters. So if you too would like to support the channel or have your name in the video, you can click the Patreon link in the description or click the YouTube join button. I also from time to time stream my runs, so you can catch me streaming on YouTube or over on Twitch at Kakyoin Gaming. I want to thank you all for watching, and until next time, take care.